It's a clash of the titans. Dragonzilla here with a review on the Godzilla King of the Monsters Gashapon. All since these figures now come with little bases, they are now known as the Gashapon Diorama. Now 2 years ago I had reviewed all the Gashapon kaiju figures that I had in the collection, but since I have gotten more and I figured that it was time to look at them. But I think I'll be reviewing each of the new groups over time rather than every few weeks like I did previously. So today I will be focusing on the complete cast from the third entry of the Monsterverse, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla and King Ghidorah were part of the first line of HD dioramas alongside Goijra and Shin Godzilla. Rodan and Mothra, however, were a different story, as they were part of the Bandai high-grade figure diorama set. But before I take a look at the figures, I'll talk about the box first. The packaging shows the promotional images for Rodan and the two Mothra figures, and the back shows the figures again, but at different angles, and what they look like with Godzilla and King Ghidorah, completed the set. However, unlike most Gashapon figures that require assembly, Rodan and Mothra were one piece. And all 5 figures come with the Rocky diorama bases. Well, at least I think they look rocky. But as you can tell, I don't use them. Now all that is out of the way, let's take a look at the new titans from this awesome movie. So we begin with the main star of the show himself, Titanus Goijra, better known as Godzilla. Now this particular figure of the Titan is a mixed bag. Some like it and others don't. But what do I think of the model? Well, for the most part, I would say he's under the category of not one of the best, but he's a good looking figure. However, before I continue on the kaiju, I'm going to look at his accessories first, so then they're out of the way. The first one is what appears to be a sandy base. I don't recall a scene that takes place on a beach, but if anyone knows what it's meant to represent, just let me know in the comments. And then there's the fire piece, to which I have no comment on. It's just a fire piece. But now let's take a look at the king himself. Right to begin with is the pose. That seems to be a battle position, or he's detecting the presence of another titan. And I said this in the thoughts and opinions video that I did a couple years ago when wave 1 of these new diorama sets were revealed, but I'll say it again for those who never saw it. In a lot of the promotional images for King of the Monsters, Godzilla was shown blasting his atomic breath to the sky, symbolizing that he is the true king, and I actually thought that when Bandai came round to making HD figures for the new movie, that would be the pose that they would go for. Instead, however, the figure has him in what I can only describe as a bow position. The paint job seems to be faithful to how he appeared in the movie. A very dark grey charcoal colour scheme, at least that's what my eyes tell me. And because throughout the film, at certain moments, his dorsal spines would flash to indicate that he was getting ready to breathe his atomic breath or show signs of intimidation. So it makes sense that the dorsal spines on the figure would be painted blue. If you look closely, you can see a little bit of translucent plastic in the spines. And speaking of those, I actually prefer this version of the spines over the 2014s. One thing that I will point out on the figure will be the head. Now I've heard people complain on his head being too small, to which I would have to ask, didn't he have a small head in the movie anyway? And because it's a Gashapon figure, making a miniature model spot on accurate to its on-screen counterpart will be a challenge. Sure, it's easy on large figures, even though they sometimes don't turn out according to plan, but with miniatures it will be a real task. But there is an error that people have talked about, and I will have to agree on that one, which is the kink in his tail. The tail is meant to be curved, but for some odd reason, it's turned out as a kink. I wish I had an answer on that one, but I have nothing to say except it's a sculpt error. Overall, I do like Titanus Goijra, and I definitely preferred 2019 Monsterverse Godzilla over 2014. because 19 is more faithful to the traditional Japanese Godzilla from Toho, in not only the spines, but the feet, and now and then the classic Godzilla roar. And if you saw my latest episode of KC Nightmare on Monster Island, you may recall seeing him make a brief cameo, and in the end credits where he was labelled as Monsters Goijra, where it really should have said Titanus Goijra. But it was just a minor error, and the figure itself is a pretty good miniature representation of the King of the Monsters. Next up is Titanus Mustara, or as we like to call her, Mothra. What you see are two figures of Mothra, one in her larvae form, and the other as an adult. And yes, it's two figures, but they're essentially the same character. So for the record, there are 4 kaiju in the group, but one has 2 forms. We'll start off with Mothra in her larvae stage, as this is how we first saw her in the movie. And as we can see, this incarnation is a massive departure from the crawling brown caterpillar that we're all used to seeing from the classic Toho films. Her appearance to me kind of puts to mind Batra when he was a larvae himself. I don't know if that's meant to be a reference to him or not. The body has what I can only describe as a brown tan / toffee colour, and her eyes are blue. If you recall, in the movie, Mothra's eyes would indicate how she was feeling. If she felt agitated, then they would turn red, but when she was calm, they would be blue, like on the figure. She has 2 sorts of legs, such as the skinny arms that she used to attack, and her stumpy legs to help her crawl around. Yeah, there's not really a lot to say on the larvae form, but should someone else obtain this set, then maybe they could fill in the blanks. And it's a shame that NECA never made the larvae form as an accessory for the adult. Speaking of which, here's Mothra in her adult form, and this is the most striking figure, as it shows her in combat. Now, when the Monsterverse Mothra was unveiled, there was a mixture of reactions and opinions amongst the fandom. Some liked the design, and others said that it was a huge departure from the traditional fluffy butterfly. And I think someone on Facebook said that Legendary had given her the 1998 treatment, but me personally, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate on this one. But I kind of like the Monsterverse Mothra. However, before you all start typing away and aggressively saying, "If you like the Monsterverse Mothra, then you're not a true Godzilla fan," well, just to let you know that, yes, I prefer the classic Mothra myself, but I think this incarnation of the Queen makes more sense, and shows that this is what Mothra would look like in real life. In fact, go and watch OmniViewer's video on the unveilings of the Titans. He goes into more detail on the subject. I provided a link to the video in the description. Anyway, the figure itself, she comes with a flight stand. Now I like it when flying figures come with these accessories, as they portray the character in flight, because without them, the model looks flat. She has the praying mantis-like arm stuck out for battle, but unfortunately the right arm, as you can see on mine, is hiding half her face. It was like that in the packaging, and this is a figure with no articulation. However, I could maybe place the arm in boiling hot water, but then again, since this is a very expensive set, I don't think that I'll take the risk, and hope that maybe it will straighten out in time. Of all the wings seen on past incarnations of the Queen, the Monsterverse Mothras is the largest, possibly surpassing the other Mothras. The plastic feels quite delicate, so I wouldn't recommend throwing this figure, and I love the patterns on her wings, especially the circles near the tips, that many folks claim that they are meant to represent Godzilla's eyes. Her body is interesting, and to me it appears to be quite feminine, which makes me wonder if that's what they were going for with the design, even though she looks like a combination between a moth, a hornet, a praying mantis, and those humanoid ant-like creatures from the Harryhausen movie First Men on the Moon. One thing that I will bring up about both Mothras will be the fact that neither of them illuminate like in the movie. which seems to be a common thing with most of the 2019 Mothra figures. The only models that do have the effect is the repaint version from NECA and X Plus Collectible, and the rest, like the Gashapons, just have the typical Mothra colour scheme, to which my guess is the illumination doesn't work on the Bandai figures. At least I don't think it does, but like Godzilla, both the larvae and adult Mothra are very good.